When discussing filtration, we find that filtration only occurs in the renal corpuscle across the filtration membrane. The renal corpuscle consists of that of Bowman's capsule and the glomerulus. Here we can see Bowman's capsule, and this as a whole is the glomerulus. The glomerulus is a specialized capillary bed which attaches to arterioles on both sides. These arterioles are the afferent and efferent arterioles. While the efferent arterioles deliver blood to the capillaries, efferent arterioles carry the blood away from the glomerulus of the kidney. So here we have the afferent, which carries blood to the capillaries, and here we have the efferent, which carries blood away. When blood leaves this efferent arteriole, the blood flows into pertubular capillaries, which drain into small venules before the blood can be returned to the venous system. With a change in blood pressure, water and other dissolved solutes will be forced out of the glomerular capillaries and into Bowman's capsule. So these should be forced from the capillaries and into this capsule here. These glomerular capillaries prevent the passage of blood cells, however, allow the diffusion of solutes including plasma proteins. They are fenestrated capillaries whose endothelium contains large diameter pores. After the water and solute is forced out of the capillaries, the protein-free solution filtrate is produced. Filtrate is said to be similar to that of blood plasma. As we revisit the renal corpuscle, we find that the visceral epithelium which surrounds the glomerular capillaries consists of large cells called podocytes, which possess complex processes or feet called pedicles that wrap around the specialized dense layers of the capillaries. So here we're going to see the visceral epithelium, which wraps around, and we're also going to see, which is also known as the podocyte. When discussing the filtration membrane in itself, we find that between adjacent pedicles are filtration slits, which are narrow gaps which regulate what passes out of the blood. Materials that do in fact end up passing out of the blood at the glomerulus must be small enough to pass between these slits. So here we can see the filtration slits, and these are in charge of what passes in and out of the blood. Also, when discussing this blood flow control, we come across mesangial cells, which can be found between adjacent capillaries and are responsible for controlling diameter and the rate of capillary blood flow. So these are responsible for making sure that the pores open large enough so we can see what comes in and out of the blood. This brings us to osmolarity. When discussing the filtration of the blood, we are reminded that bodily fluids have an osmotic concentration of about 300 milliosmoliters per liter. We are also reminded that the osmolarity of a given substance is directly related to the colloid osmotic pressure, also known as the ability of a solution to draw water towards it. As we discuss filtration pressure, we find that glomerular filtration is in fact reliant on the balance between hydrostatic or fluid pressure and colloid osmotic pressure. So here we see our hydrostatic pressure as well as our blood colloid osmotic pressure. When discussing this, we also find that while glomerular hydrostatic pressure tends to push water and solute out of the plasma and into the filtrate, the blood colloid osmotic pressure instead tends to draw water out of the filtrate and into the plasma. So basically, the hydrostatic pressure is pushing water out, as we can see here, while the colloid osmotic pressure is pushing it in. The sum of both of these is referred to as the net filtration pressure. And here we can see that together they make the net filtration pressure. In conclusion, when discussing the amount of filtrate that the kidneys produce each minute, it is known as glomerular filtration rate. On average, 125 milliliters per minute is produced, and about 10% of this is delivered to the kidneys, which leaves the bloodstream and enters the capsular spaces. So again, this will enter into the capsular spaces. While glomeruli generate about 180 liters of filtrate per day, about 99% is resorbed into the renal tubes. So again, this was filtration. Thank you for listening.